Hi all, this is another video for the Evolution of Style series, and we're tracking the evolution of Alexander Alekhine and his impact on the general evolution of style. In the early Alekhine years he was playing correspondence chess, and this is taken from the Earl tournament of Russia 1906. So it shows actually he was quite willing to experiment in his correspondence games, and after e4, e5 he actually played an unusual move, which I think is called the Alapin's variation, so knight e2. So conventionally we're playing knight f3 to put pressure on e5, and the Royal Pairs continues that pressure. But here, what is the idea of knight e2? Completely different system. Sets unusual problems for the opponent. The knight can swing to g3 where it can eye f5, and if the knight's on g3 actually, the queen can also come out without being blocked by the traditional knight on f3, so there's some key differences. Black plays now f5. I'm not sure how much theory Black had available to him at that time in 1906. Probably not much compared to modern theory and databases, not much at all. So maybe Black's already trying to improvise. And f5 I'm not sure is a brilliant response because of knight g3, and believe it or not, just at move 3 I think White's already got technically an advantage. If we engine check this position, White's got a small advantage, but now it's going to get bigger with Black's next move. Actually, after queen h4, this isn't seen as a good move at all, so really Black has improvised. So I guess that tells us something actually, that at that time the opening theory wasn't as evolved. Correspondence chess was especially interesting for researching unusual lines or playing unusual lines without being drastically punished. And the problem with the queen h4 concept is that the queen is potentially liable to being trapped. So that's a risk factor of bringing the queen and then developing pieces behind it. You don't want to block the queen's exit route back. So knight c3 is played, supporting e4. Already there's some other issues like f5, knight f5. So bishop c5 was played here. So if knight takes f5, then of course queen takes f2 is mate. So White supports the f2 pawn, now renewing basically a threat on f5. So we can either take potentially the queen, the pawn, or the knight now. d6 is played, just offering up f5. So why wouldn't Black be keen, you might argue, for taking on e4? Well, maybe Black didn't want knight takes e4, and it looks to give a promising position to White already. So he sort of treats it as a gambit by playing d6, and this is not a particularly strong gambit unless Black has clear compensation. So e takes f5. White's grabbing some squares with this. The pawn is of course hooking into e6. We've got the queen on the diagonal now. We've got access to the e4 square from either knight. Not looking too pleasant already. Knight e7 is played. Now knight ce4 is played. There's enough support on f5, and knight takes c5 threatens to damage Black's pawn structure. Black accepts that risk though and plays knight c6, which maybe is a good idea to invite knight c5. So White actually deprives Black now of also the threat knight d4 to harass the queen. It's deprived with c3. But not only that, after bishop b6, now the first really good move by Alexander, which is kind of logical actually to try and exploit this queen, he plays d4. So it's not just simply losing a pawn. The problem is after ed there'll be bishop g5. So ed, bishop g5, and where is the queen going? It's been embarrassed here. It's been sort of checkmated. So Black cannot do e takes d4. So there's problems already. He plays h6 to deprive White of bishop g5. But now comes knight h5, eyeing g7. Also it means the g pawn is now free to move. It's been liberated for g3 to be renewing a threat of checkmating the queen in effect again. So g3 is a nasty threat. Black now plays knight takes f5. Okay, so here, after knight takes f5, this diagonal back is giving an escape route for the black queen. So what does Alexander do? He wants to play his g3 and he wants to trap the queen. So a very nice move. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, I hope you spotted it. He plays knight hf6 check. So it's giving up a whole knight, whole piece down, to try and trap the queen with g3. Now this wasn't the end of the story actually. Black didn't resign. There was a few more moves, and even at the end of the game it remained controversial now, this game. It seems Alexander had relaxed. The young Alexander maybe had thought winning the queen, mission accomplished, end of game. But Black strikes back now with an amazing tactical combination, which maybe he didn't appreciate the full, material compensation for the queen himself. But it's really cool what Black does. Can you actually spot what Black does if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay. The queen is trapped here. So what does Black do? He plays knight f takes d4. So if pawn takes now, there's knight takes f3. If cd, Alexander for some reason was not tempted for cd, although it appears to be the strongest move. So remember, white is currently a knight down. Maybe Alexander wanted to play an unexpected move and keep the queen trapped, but really cd is the best. He played actually queen d3, and now Black gives up his queen, winning another knight. So 2 knights for the queen at the moment, materially. And now bishop f5, and the material is adding up here. Where does Alexander's queen go? He goes actually to g2, and after check, he's now losing the rook. So we're talking about 2 knights and a rook. Let's do the maths. 2 knights and a rook. 5 plus 3 plus 3, 11. That's more than a generous queen if you value a queen at 10. Some people value the queen at 9. It really depends on the position. Other factors peculiar to this position: this knight's kind of trapped. Can it get out easily? But the bishop's good. These pieces are not so hot at the moment. The king's kind of in the centre, it's not so hot. So it's not the end of the story really, by far, by a long shot. But it seems Black had been disheartened. Maybe he really didn't expect this course of events and was surprised that his queen was trapped, and so felt he morally had lost the game or something. He felt guilty or something. He didn't really assess the chances in this position because this wasn't an expected course of the game for him. After queen f3, he does play another move, bishop e6, eyeing a2, and if a2 is won, then b3 will be given for the knight, and that will be check, and things will be perking up. But another unexpected move from Alexander, a tactical move, which seems to have more of a devastating psychological effect than actually an objective effect on the position. I wonder if you can spot this next move if I give you 10 seconds here. Okay, bishop a6. And here, I think Black's just very annoyed with these tactics. If castling queenside, then queen c6, and it looks as though this is a brilliant tactic. The queen can't be taken, and if takes, this isn't what Black would maybe consider of being ideal, but it's actually okay. This is okay to allow queen takes c6, believe it or not, and even maybe taking. In fact, let's do an engine check of this final position. So here is where Black resigned, and Black is given as being better. So it's an unusual resignation indeed. Black's better whether Black castles queenside or takes on a6. Both are roughly the same. In fact, the strongest technically might be taking to invite the queen c6, and now the king moves. So materially, you know, we've still got that situation where black has a rook and 2 minor pieces for the queen, which is adequate. But can the knight get out? Well, maybe there's an issue because the evaluation is now coming down. Say white plays b4, then bishop f5, say bishop b2. The knight can try and get out. Rook c1, and it might be here that actually maybe this really depressed, this variation really depressed black, because he has to like lose a bit of material now. 2 minor pieces for the rook. But even so, black appears to be about equal here after a5. Even tiny little bit better. No, just about equal after b5. So to be fair, you know, Alexander did have a reasonable position after his move bishop a6, but it wasn't the end of the story. It shouldn't have perhaps been the end of the story. Black has 2 rooks for the queen here. How else can we evaluate this? 7 pawns against 3, 4, 5, 6, a pawn up. But what's the main issue here? If we follow this through, it seems black should be able to hold this position, to be fair. So it's an interesting and curious correspondence game from a few different angles. Psychologically, maybe a bit of complacency on Alexander's part after winning the queen, that he didn't take on d4, which seems to be the strongest move. Let's turn off the engine and go back. But an unusual opening theory wasn't as evolved as now, and maybe, you know, the opponent was taken by surprise at this whole queen trapping. It wasn't intentional, I guess, so was disheartened. Alexander's best move here is just simply to take the knight. So it's an interesting blunder here because it seems to be significantly better technically, but easy with engines, isn't it, nowadays compared to back then. So black gives up the queen here. It's under much less favourable circumstances. White remains a lot better actually, because queen takes b7 is also hitting the rook, so white's even avoiding the immediate knight c2. If it happens here, then it's not such a big deal as before. White's much better. Queen f3 hitting the bishop. Bishop takes h6. Interesting idea because the rook is being hit on a8 at the moment, so that could be a dangerous h-pawn. So it's a whole lot better, this picture, than the game continuation. A whole lot better. +3, plus almost +4. But in the game, yeah, Alexander just was content with just winning the queen, but the material was stacking up against the queen, and black had a fighting chance at the end, but maybe was depressed and from the unexpected events after bishop a6 resigned. But a curious game, I hope you'll agree. Comments or questions on YouTube, and if you haven't already, you know, you can subscribe to the King's Crusher channel for free and be notified of any new videos. Thanks very much.